Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning. I'm going to carry on going through the Rachel Aviv New Yorker article, which I'd started doing before. I'm just moving on to the next part. What I want to say from the off is that the way it's being told, the timeline of events here, it's a bit of an issue here around what about baby, I need to check, child E, the death of child E, that was a supposed murder on the 4th of August. That doesn't seem to be being looked at or described here in any way. I don't know why that is. Rachel Aviv has gone from the 3 deaths in June 2015, and she said, 4 months later, this happened. So she must be referring to, and she says it's a girl, the sad death of this child. So she must be referring to child I, who is a girl, on the 23rd of October. That's the supposed murder for that date. But there was a charge of murder that Lucy Letby was convicted for on the 4th of August. So I'm not sure why that's kind of been missed out. Is that deliberate or is it a mistake? Because thus far they seem to be telling it in a kind of linear narrative way. I'm not sure why that was missed out anyway. That's where I'm starting with that. But I'll go back to the article now. The next month, Lucy Letby, who was in a salsa group, so the next month here must be November. Because if Rachel Aviv has jumped over the death of child E in August, and she's gone into the murder that was said to have happened in October 2015. And now she's saying the next month, so she must mean November here, one would suppose. Lucy Letby, who was in a salsa group, got out of class and saw 3 missed calls. The nurses on the unit had called her because they didn't know how to give a baby intravenous immunoglobulin treatment. Quote, "Just can't believe that some people are in a position when they don't know how to give something, what equipment to use, and not being supported by the manager." So that's what Lucy Letby has said. Lucy Letby texted this to her best friend, a nurse I'll call Cheryl. Quote, "Staffing really needs looking at." She described the unit as chaos and a madhouse. It's not super clear there, but is that Cheryl writing back and saying that, or is that a continuation of the text of Lucy Letby following up her initial text saying or part of the same text saying staffing really needs looking at? She described the unit as chaos and in a madhouse. The way it's written there, it's not super clear as to whether that is Lucy Letby, could be, or is it Cheryl returning the text and kind of agreeing with her. It's not. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say it was Lucy Letby saying that, but it's not really that clear. So just to say again, staffing really needs looking at. Either Lucy Letby saying that or Cheryl says that. She described the unit as chaos and a madhouse. I'm assuming that's Lucy Letby saying that. One of the senior paediatricians, Alison Timmis, I've mentioned her before because of her quite damning email to Tony Chambers, the chief executive, saying, well, we're going to come into it now, was similarly distressed. She emailed the hospital's chief executive, Tony Chambers, to complain that staff on the unit were, quote, chronically overworked and, quote, no one is listening. So what date is she saying this is happening? We're assuming it's happening around about the same time. I think that's what we were going with before, that it's happened. This email's happening in November/December 2015. So Alison Timmis is saying no one is listening. And she also wrote, Alison Timmis, to the chief executive, Tony Chambers, quote, over the past few weeks, I have seen several medical and nursing colleagues in tears, close quote. And now back to Rachel Aviv's text. Doctors were working shifts that ran more than 20 hours, she explained, so she's reporting speech now. Doctors were working shifts that ran more than 20 hours, she explained, and the unit was so busy that, quote, at several points we ran out of vital equipment such as incubators. It's a level 2 unit. If you run out of incubators, you're not fit to... At another point, a midwife had to assist with a resuscitation because there weren't enough trained nurses. Quote, this is back to Alison Timmis. This is now our normal working pattern and it is not safe, Timmis wrote. Quote again from Timmis. Things are stretched thinner and thinner and are at breaking point. When things snap, the casualties will either be children's lives or the mental and physical health of our staff. She was certainly right about that. And now it goes into the next year in Rachel Aviv's article. At the end of January 2016, the senior paediatricians met with a neonatologist at a nearby hospital. It's an interesting part coming up now, that I believe is interesting. To review the ward's mortality data. And then Rachel Aviv writes here, in 2013 and 2014, the unit had 2 and 3 deaths respectively. I just need to pause there because I'm just going to call this up. I've got these different files open. The Freedom of Information request shows that actually that statement is not correct. Well, either that's not correct or the Freedom of Information request is not correct. Anyway, there's a disparity. The actual figures for 2013 and 14 are 4 each year. 3 early neonatal deaths and 1 late neonatal death for 2013 and exactly the same pattern for 2014. So I'm not sure why that is wrong. So it's not 2 and 3, it's 4 and 4. In 2015 there had been 8. I don't know if there had been 8 because of what the last video I made when they're deciding to put cases that were charged as murders as stillbirths. So how many other ones did they do that with? There's certainly more than 8 then, if that's what they've done. Just to recap on that, 2 murder charges in 2015, August 2015 and October 2015. The 2 murder charges, they're not showing up as an early or a late neonatal death. But there are figures for both those, there are figures in the stillbirths column. Can we reliably infer that both those cases have been falsely, wrongly, deliberately, accidentally, on purpose coded as, for whatever reason, as stillbirths, in which case you've got to add those 2 to that 8, which would be 10 for that year, if that's the case. At the meeting, back to the meeting, quote, there were a few learning points, nothing particularly exciting, Breary recalled. Odd choice of words, exciting. Odd choice of words. People reveal themselves by their linguistic slippages, shall we say. They reveal stuff, you know. What does he want to get excited about? Why would he find it exciting? I know you could pounce too much on individual words, but there's just an odd choice there, to me anyway. Red flag. Breary recalled, near the end, he asked the neonatologist what he thought about the fact that Lucy Letby was present for each death. I can't remember him suggesting anything really, Breary said. We've got to unpack this now. So Breary's saying that Lucy Letby's present for each death. But is she? For all those 8? For all that, so is she? Let's go back. I've got to flip between my files here. So we want to go to 2015. That's what he's talking about, that Lucy Letby is present for each death. Well, there's a death in January 2015, and that's not on the murder sheet. So was Lucy Letby present for that death or not? Or is that just one of the every deaths that Breary said that she's present for? He's just ignoring that, is he? Is Breary ignoring that when he's talking to the neonatologist? The January 15 death. Then June 15, where it is said that Lucy Letby is present for all three. But then there's a death in July 2015. These are these so-called 8 deaths that happened in 2015. I think there's maybe more, but they've been recoded as stillbirths. July 2015, there's a death of an early neonate child. Is Brewery saying that Lucy was present for that as well, even though it didn't lead to any charges, they didn't try to pin that on Lucy, so presumably she wasn't present, or they just couldn't pin it. We just don't know conclusively one way or the other. These are the other deaths that nobody wants to speak about in that trial. Nobody wants to go into them in any depth, so they can compare them to the ones where Lucy's been convicted of murdering and attempted murders. All these other ones are in shadow, and they want to keep them in shadow. So we've had 2 already in that year, so we can either presume that Lucy Letby was not present at those deaths at all, contrary to what Breary's saying about present for all the deaths, or that she was, and for some reason Evans and co don't think it's suspicious. So why would it make a difference? So I think the likelihood is she wasn't present, but either way it works. It doesn't fit with Breary's attempt to say that Lucy's presence, simple presence, is affecting whether something should be deemed intended harm or not, does it? Because we've got 2 deaths already there. Then we got the problem of the August 2015 death that isn't marked on the Freedom of Information request, data, answer, but there are 2 stillbirths there, but there's nothing, no deaths showing for either early or late neonate children. Then we have even more the case here. We have 2 deaths in September 2015. Those 2 deaths didn't come to charges or didn't come to investigations, or they were obviously ones that Evans, well, according to him anyway, decided were all explainable and expected. That they were either ones that Lucy wasn't present for. We don't know that conclusively one way or the other, but nonetheless, they were deaths that never ended up being part of the investigation or part of the charge sheet or the list of convictions. They weren't investigated. So was Lucy there for those 2? Possibly not. But even if she was, they didn't result in anything. So she can be there let's say she can be there for some of the deaths, and they don't end up being on the charge sheet. So what was Breary talking about to the neonatologist? Was he including some of these other ones that never ended up being charges? We just don't know, because we need the roster and the rota for the January 2015 death. We need it for the July one. We need it for the 2 in September one. And I hadn't finished. We need it for the one in December 2015. There's an early neonatal death in December 2015. Is that one that Lucy wasn't present for? And yet Breary's trotting out this spiel at the end of January, and it gets worse in a minute. It gets a lot worse. At the end of we've got December 2015 death that never investigated. That one of the ones that Evans says, it's explainable and expected. You can just move those across. I think he's done that because Lucy's not on duty, personally. I suspect that. I don't know 100% because we haven't got the rosters for all these other deaths that occurred that didn't end up being part of the investigation. So what we have here, looking at the full year of 2015, when Breary's saying that to the neonatologist, we have how many deaths are actually counted here. We're looking at 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is hard to work out because of this thing with the stillbirths. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Well, we've got 9 listed here, not 8. So again, Rachel Aviv's statement that there are 8 is that doesn't seem right. I'll just check it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are 8 early neonatal and one late neonatal in November 2015. That's one I missed out, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. So I mentioned the December 2015 one. There's also a late neonatal death in November 2015, which again isn't one that Breary can say, oh, well, there's suspicious, then what ends up being called a suspicious death where Lucy's present, because it never ends up being called a suspicious death. So out of the 9 listed here, and we've got, this is tricky because we've got some that have probably been moved. We've got the October and the August deaths that I think have been moved over and recoded as stillbirths. This is a dog's dinner, what they've done here. And it's all coming out, I think, if this is correct. Their machinations are beginning to come out more and more the more you look at it. But Breary says to the neonatologist, according to Rachel Aviv, oh, isn't it odd that Lucy Letby is present with all the deaths? So the ones marked in here, and they've missed off 2, by the way. Let's just look at the ones that they've marked. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we've got 8. Sorry, I miscounted. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in that year. But or are there 10? Because they've recoded 2. The August and the October deaths are stillbirths. Let's go with the 8 for the moment. Out of that 8, how many reached the charge sheet? How many reached a position where they were being investigated as murders and ended up with convictions? Well, 3 out of the 8. 3 out of the 8. But on the list here, if you bring in the August and October deaths, which have been coded as stillbirths, then it could be 5 out of 10. I hope I'm being clear about that. It's be good if you could see the sheet again. It's a list of stillbirths. You've got early neonatal deaths, late neonatal deaths, and post-neonatal. There's zeros in all those. And there's late fetal loss, which is miscarriage. And so in either event, for at least half or the preponderance, either 5 out of 8 or 5 out of 10, Lucy Letby was either there or not. We don't know. Let's say she wasn't there, so she was either not there for 5 of the 10, even though Breary's saying she's there for all of them. Or if she was there, but there's nothing suspicious about it. Because we know that because they weren't investigated, those 5 deaths. Well, yeah, it's going to be either five deaths weren't investigated. And 5 deaths were, but 2 of them are being pushed into stillbirths on this. So we've got the 3 in June, but we've got the August and the October death not showing as a death at all. Both those not showing. They're just a column in stillbirth. So it's very curious. It's very odd. And when I said a minute ago it gets worse, and it does, because just going back to the Rachel Aviv article, they're doing this at the end of January. If you remember the last video I made, I said something happens in January. Outside of June 2015, it's the biggest spike that there is across this whole period. A spike of 3 deaths in January 2016. January 2016, at the end of that month, this is where Breary's meeting with the senior paediatricians, and they're saying Lucy Letby's present for everything, even though she, in all likelihood, might not even be present for, could be present for less than half, or at most half. Possibly she's present for more, but even if she was, they never get charged, they never get investigated. So we can only assume that, well, we must assume, it must be correct that Evans decided that they were explainable, and whether Lucy was there or not. We can't conclusively say because we don't know the rotas for those other deaths. In January 2016, we've got 3 deaths, none of which Lucy was blamed for. None of which she was blamed for. So when Breary's saying to this neonatologist at this meeting at a nearby hospital at the end of 2016, end of January 2016, is he bothered about the January 2016 deaths, the biggest spike since June? Is he even considering that? In January 2016, as many deaths in that 1 month as there was in the whole of 2014. I'll check that because of what I said earlier. (2014). No, there were 4. So almost as many. I said there were 4 and 4. Yeah, so 3 in January 2016 and 4 in the whole of 2013 and the whole of 2014. 4, but 3 in 1 month. None of them attributable to Lucy Letby. None of them. And as I said in the last video, just to repeat that, this most intense period of deaths of children in that unit, most intense period runs from, let's make this right, runs from November 2015 through to March 2016. November, December, January, February, March, 5 months in which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 babies died. None of those deaths attributed to Lucy Letby. None of those were said to be murders. The most intense period of deaths in those 5 months, across the whole period, none of them attributed to Lucy Letby. I don't want to lose my focus here with this. Back to the article. Breary recalled, nothing particularly exciting. Weird comment. Breary recalled, weird guy, weird comment. Near the end, he asked the neonatologist what he thought about the fact that Lucy Letby was present for each death. Well, is that true though? Can we really say that? Could he really say that at the time? Was he lying about that? Was he mistaken about it? Which ones is he including? When he says that statement? Is he including the January the 2015 death, no charge of murder? Is he including the July 2015 death, no charge of murder? Is he including 2 deaths in September, no charges of murder? Is he including the November 2015 death, no charge of murder? Is he including the December 2015 death, no charge of murder? No investigations for any of those I just went through. What is he talking about? Is he just talking about the 3 in June 2015 and then the August and October deaths in 2015 that conveniently, or you might want to look at it like that, conveniently have been recoded or miscoded accidentally on purpose as stillbirths? Is he focusing on those 5 but not considering the other 5? Well, more than the other 5. What about, because we're at the end of January 2016, the 3 in January itself? So that's 8. So all the deaths that end up being murder charges, we're looking at a ratio or a percentage, if you like, or a fraction of Lucy Letby ends up being charged with 5 murders, but out of at that point January 2016, I want to get this right, 8, 10, 13 deaths. Is that right? Yes, because we've got 8 showing on the Freedom of Information request, but we've got 2 missing on there. We've got the August and the October one missing. So that's 10, plus the 3 in January, it's 13. So when Breer is at the meeting saying Lucy Letby's present for them all, she ends up she ends up being charged with 5 of those deaths out of 13. Out of 13. Because according to the Freedom of Information request here, it looks like there were 10 deaths, not 8, in 2015, and 2 of them were coded as stillbirths in August and October 2015. Why? We don't know. Were they trying to massage the figures because it was all getting out of control? So that's just extraordinary that he would say that. So what does the guy say? I can't remember, Brewery goes on, I can't remember him suggesting anything really. Oh, that's convenient, isn't it? So he says that to someone. And his memory of it is, well, I don't remember anything. He didn't say anything at all. Didn't shrug, didn't go, God, that sounds bad. Didn't ask you any further questions. What do you mean by it, Brewery? Do you mean all of them, all 13? Or just 5 out of the 13? When you say, Brewery, to this guy, this neonatologist, that Lucy Letby is present for each death, what do you mean by that? When there have been 13 deaths at the period, at the point you say that, there's been 13 deaths, and Lucy Letby gets charged for 5 of them. What do you mean when you say that Lucy Letby's been charged, that she was present for all of them? Was she? I don't think that's true. How many she was present for? One's mixture of one's charged and one's not charged. We simply don't know. He didn't know when he said that. He probably didn't know when he said that. If he did know, he wouldn't say it was for each death, would he? They're deciding to make Lucy Letby the target of being present at the deaths that they're deciding are suspicious. The other ones are not being suspicious because she's not present. This is the beginning of this that gets capitalised on, and Evans gets brought into this finesse, this horrible fraud and construction of this case against Lucy Letby later on. This is the beginnings of it here. Well, I think it started before, but this is the beginnings of it being promulgated out to other people, like in this meeting with this neonatologist. I'll come to the end in a minute. It takes a lot in this. There were some other points. I read it over once, right? But Jayaram, our friend Jayaram and Brewery, like a dodgy couple of characters, aren't they? Sharing an office, gossiping all the time. Were increasingly troubled by the link. Well, link to what? Link to how many deaths? How many out of the 13? I keep repeating it. Quote, it was like, oh, here comes your TV wannabe, TV doctor, wannabe rock star, wannabe TV star Jayaram, sticking his crap in. He says, Jayaram, quote, it was like staring at a magic eye picture. Was it? Was it? Jayaram told me, i.e. Jayaram told Rachel Aviv, quote, at first it's just a load of dots. And the dots are incoherent. Yeah, because you're not actually looking at all the deaths, are you? You're not looking at them all. You're only looking at 5 of them. You're not looking at the other 8 over the period. But you stare at them all, Jayaram tells us, and all of a sudden the picture appears. Yeah, the picture you want to put there. You already had the picture in your head, and you're placing it there. He goes on to say, and then, banal rubbish, and then once you can see that picture, you see it every time you look. Confirmation bias, it's called, Jayaram. Confirmation bias. You see it every time you look, and you think, well, I don't think he does that much thinking, does he? How the hell did I miss that? Well, because you've decided to put it there. It's your bias. It's your bullying of Lucy Letby deciding to put it there. You've made the picture out of whole cloth, and you've conveniently ignored all the things that would distort the picture and make the picture not the picture, i.e. 8 other deaths in the last 13 months, going back from the end of January 2016 back to the beginning of 2015. You stare at them, yeah. How the hell did I miss that? Yeah, because you hadn't built up your scapegoating enough. You hadn't solidified it enough to really be going for someone as much as you wanted to. you'll note with what they're being reported as saying at this time, they're not saying anything about deliberate harm. It's being left kind of open. At least the way it's being reported here is being, well, what they're thinking privately and what they were thinking and gossiping, Jairam and Beery, is something else. But you're kind of led to believe that, well, they're just saying she's there. They're not being explicit that it's deliberate harm, are they? Are they also potentially leaving it open that they think it's some kind of incompetence or some kind of, even though Lucy Letby is the one being called by other nurses because the other nurses can't do what they need to do on the ward, and they're ringing her up and she's having to tell them from a distance what you need to do because she's one of the highest trained ones there. Here we are. How the hell did I miss that? That's the end of that character's spiel. By the spring of 2016, he said, i.e. Jairam said, he could not unsee it. Well, yeah, he didn't want to unsee it because they're fixated then. They've decided. They decided who's going to take the rap. But they know they can't put Lucy on. They can't frame Lucy for all the deaths. So they're going to cherry pick them, and then the police get involved in the cherry picking, and it's solidified and ratified by Evans's cherry picking. They're all in the same group together, the trio, as I've said many times in other videos. These two characters, Jairam and Breary, with Dr. B and Gibbs in tow as sort of second rate sort of characters. The police, the foolish, idiot, gullible, silly, arrogant, vainglorious police that will just do anything, they're told by the Evans and these doctors. And they're after their own glory as well. And then Evans himself. They're all in one big morass of selecting the cases and cherry picking the cases they want and just avoiding all the ones that are inconvenient. Couldn't unsee it. Going back to the article. Many of the deaths had occurred at night, so Powell, the unit manager, that's Arian Powell, shifted Lucy Letby primarily to day shifts. I knew that had happened, but I thought that happened later in the year. There's no date given here. I can't remember off the top of my head when that happened, but it didn't happen in January, I don't think. I think it happened a little bit later, in 2016. And Arian Powell apparently did this because there would be, quote, more people about to be able to support her, she said. Well, obviously they're not going to support her in being a murderer, are they? So when Arian Powell is saying that, and when she's made that decision, it's going to be on the basis of not intended harm, is it? We're not going to support her in her intended harm, are we? We're going to support her in the idea that these consultants are saying that deaths are happening when Lucy Letby is on duty, and they're putting 2 and 2 together and making 5, even though there's all these other deaths happening when she's not on duty as well. Or she may have been on duty, but they never end up being investigated. I think a lot of them she wouldn't have been on duty for, and that's why they... we can't know. We just don't know. We don't have the rosters. But we got proof here from Arian Powell that what was going on there is that nobody was saying explicitly to her. They were whispering it probably. There's a thing where Jairam or someone whispers something in a lunch queue about, babies being deliberately harmed. These are very unprofessional people. Very unprofessional, narcissistic, possibly sociopathic people. Breary and Jairam, in my view, in my opinion. Don't come for me, in my opinion. Don't sue me. Because there'll be more people about to be able to support her. So what does that sound like? It doesn't sound like Arian Powell, the unit manager, is suspecting Lucy of deliberate harm. She's trying to placate these noisome consultants who keep badgering her about Lucy Letby, even though she's one of the best nurses there. Then we're zipping forward into June 2016. I'm just going to go back to my thing here to see if they haven't missed anything. It's hard for me to... So in June 2016... Oh yes, well, so we're zipping in June 2016, but I just want to say there's a death in February 2016. the next month after that meeting that Breary had with the neonatologist and said Lucy's there all the time, there's a death in February 16. That doesn't end up being attributed to Lucy. And then there's a death in March 2016, the next month after that. That doesn't end up being attributed to Lucy Letby. There's all these other deaths happening, the majority of which have got nothing to do, were never linked to Lucy Letby. Never linked to her, never investigated. Then we've got, just to finish off that year, in June 2016, we've got 2 deaths. They ended up being 2 murder charges for which Lucy Letby was convicted. But then we have a death in July 2016. We have a death in July 2016 that Lucy Letby wasn't convicted of for any kind of that wasn't investigated as a crime. Then we have a death in August 2016 that Lucy Letby wasn't investigated for, and it wasn't investigated as a crime. Look at all these other deaths that are going on around these cherry-picked deaths where they've decided, oh, we'll decide these ones are murderers, but all the other ones, we don't need to say anything about them. We'll keep them very quiet. Take out the deaths that Lucy has been held responsible, and we've got potentially 12, potentially more, I think at least 12, potentially more deaths that are happening anyway. Which is, that's across two full years, so that's 6 each year, so that's 50% increase on 2013 and 2014, which had 4 each year apiece. I know I'm saying, I know each one is a tragedy for the family, but I'm just saying that it comes down to these figures that are being abused and misused to convict an innocent person and give people the impression that all the deaths were at Lucy Letby's door. But we're seeing here that the preponderance of deaths weren't investigated as crimes at all. The majority of deaths weren't investigated as crimes at all. So it leaves you with this double I want to say whammy, but it sounds it's not the right word, but it's 2 things happening at once you've got this big spike in deaths that nobody's talking about what the actual reason for those is. That's 12, possibly more deaths. And you've got a murderer killing 7 babies. And you've got a spike in deaths as well. And you've got Alison Timmis saying what she said, what I read out a little while ago, that no one's listening to us, and if something isn't done, that it's going to be. I'll read that again. Let me find it. What does she say? What does she say again? Things are getting stretched thinner and thinner, and are at breaking point. When things snap, the casualties will either be children's lives. She's writing this in late autumn 2015, early winter, late autumn, will either be children's lives or the mental and physical health of our staff. Well, she was right about the children's lives, both going backwards, back to June, but also projecting forwards right into the summer of 2016. I'm not sure whether to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there, actually, because I got up to the point where I didn't think it would take this long, but it's very rich, this article, in what it can allow you to bring into it and to connect to it, and what it's alluding to, and other elements of a story around it. I know that Rachel Aviv does a cracking job on this, and she can't put everything in, but the reason I'm making these videos is to add a commentary of what I consider to be, and other people consider to be, very salient and important issues around the information and the argumentation here and the suggestion that's being brought to bear in this article. So I just finished there, just to reiterate. So Arian Powell says to move Lucy Letby on to day shifts. Again, there's no date here, I can't remember it. It's a bit later, it's later than February, I'm sure it is. I think it's more in the springtime that happens, because then Rachel Aviv jumps to June 2016. Not sure why Rachel Aviv has missed out the supposed murder in August 2016. That's a kind of a conspicuous thing to miss out. I don't know why that is, or why she's got the stats wrong for 2013 and 14. But you know, she's done amazingly well with lots of other stuff here. Yeah, Arian Powell says more people about to support Lucy Letby. She's placating the consultants who won't stop targeting Lucy Letby, won't stop bullying her. We know that they bullied her because her complaint against them was upheld and they were forced to issue an apology in 2017, weren't they? And Lucy Letby was to be coming back, and then they couldn't have that. They couldn't brook that. Their arrogance and their narcissism couldn't brook that. No, not only have they been forced to apologise, but they're going to have to work with Lucy Letby again. These high, godlike consultants are going to have to work with the nurse that has brought a complaint against them, and they've had to apologise in writing to her, and Jayaram apologised face to face as well. So yeah, Arian Powell isn't swapping the shifts for Lucy Letby to support her in her murder campaign. It's the idea that they're kind of placating the consultants and saying, okay, well, if you think there's something at odds with Lucy Letby's practice, we'll move her on to day shifts, even though she's one of our best nurses, but we're trying to keep you happy, you spoilt children, i.e. the consultants. So that's that. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm not sure if there was anything else I was going to say. Yeah, all this stuff, all this storytelling about the dots and the magic eye stuff. Nothing exciting. Brewery can't remember what the guy says back to him. It's all half-baked storytelling, scripting, re-scripting of what was going on then as well. All mixing it. Evans does this all over the shop. In my videos of 7, 8 months and 9 months ago, Evans's tendency is to constantly talk about things in the present as though they go back retrospectively and talk about things as though things were known then that were only known afterwards. So he's mixing up times all over the shop, and they're doing the same, and it's all this fast and loose with time. Something's in the way. So yeah, I think that's the end of the video, and I haven't got very much further on in the article, but there'll be a lot more to come, I think, in this. There's another episode of, I haven't listened to it yet, there's another episode of We Need to Talk About Lucy Letby that's gone up on Spotify with Peter Alston and Dr. Michael McConville. I'll listen to that either tonight or tomorrow. I think they're focusing on the plumbing, the Victorian plumbing, as they're calling it in the podcast. I'll put all the same links as I do on all the other ones where I'm going through this article, so all the links will be there as with the other sections I'm doing. Thanks very much for listening, if you have, and there's just this can't be allowed to stand, this horrific miscarriage of justice. Thank you.